You enjoying your special day, son?
I expect nothing. And I'm still let down.
It sure is.
Tator-chan here. It's been a good amount of time since I released my first impressions video on the Ssum. At long last, after 200 days and then some, the journey has come to an end. As of now, there are two love interests to choose from: Theo, the first love interest and poster boy who has 200 days worth of content, and Harry, the second love interest who initially had 100 days, but since May 2023 has an additional 100 days, equaling him to Theo's 200. Both routes are expected to have more content in due time, and additional love interests will be added. But in this video, I will be talking about the game as I played it from August 2022 to March 2023. This encompasses the original 200 days of Theo's route and the 100 days of Harry's. So you might be asking,
Hey, tator-chan, are you gonna make another video on the Ssum? Will you continue playing the game? Are you going to make another video on?
I'm glad you asked, because the answer is a resounding no. Beyond just making a follow-up to my initial video on the Ssum, I really wanted to give it another chance and see whether it would change my mind by the end. This game is such a mixed bag. There was so much potential, and I had such high expectations for Chariots, a company that's made really good Otome games in the past. The Ssum sadly greatly disappoints me. It's not all bad, but the good is really weighed down by the negative aspects. Playing the Ssum eventually became more of a chore for me, and I only finished Theo's route for the sake of this video. I don't want to force myself to keep playing the game and spending money just for a good experience. There are plenty of Otome out there for me to play and talk about. But for now, I want to thoroughly dissect and discuss my thoughts on the Ssum. Needless to say, spoilers! If you really care about the Ssum and the routes of Theo and Harry, then don't watch this because I am unraveling everything about this game and nothing is off limits. If you want a more first impressions general overview without any major spoilers, I have a previous video on the Ssum that you can check out. Lastly, please like and comment on this video and subscribe. Your support goes a long way. Good parts and improvements. Before I dive straight into everything the Ssum did wrong, and yes, there's a lot of bad to go through, there are notable improvements that deserve recognition. These additions and fixes have elevated the gameplay, at least to some extent. One of the bigger issues I talked about in my first video was the pricing model. At launch, there were only two subscription models, the Rainbow Evolution package for $20 a month and the Aurora Evolution package for $25 a month. Both have their own exclusive features, but namely you can see the love interest Twitter accounts, get secondary batteries in addition to Aurora batteries that can be used to skip wait times in chat and select premium choices, avoid ads, see hidden messages and pictures in chat, and the love interest type faster. In my personal opinion, I found both subscription tiers to be way overpriced for what you get. I understand the company needs to make money, but the value really does not equate to the price tag. Still, I did choose to subscribe to a tier for a couple months. Therefore, you might be asking,
Tator-chan, do you really need to buy a subscription package? You know you can play that game without it.
yeah, that's true. I could do that if I really wanted to torture myself for 200 plus days. Look, the game drags so badly in the free version. It takes forever for your love interest to message, choices are limited, lots of messages and images are blocked, and you're more focused on trying to save your batteries. The subscriptions made all of this easier and gave me less of a headache. I'm fortunate that I have a good job that allows me to spend so much money on the game, but yikes, I really wish I could have instead used it for a different game, to be quite honest. But here's the good news. Chariots made a really good decision a couple months after the game's release, with the introduction of another, more affordable subscription package, Pew Pew Plus for $7.99 a month. I immediately switched to this package once it was available. If you have the funds and you actually want to play through the whole game, I would recommend getting this subscription at the very least. You don't have access to the guy's Twitter, but hey, at least you can have a more pleasant gameplay experience since nothing in the chat is hidden, and you get a limited amount of secondary batteries that will get you through the day, so long as you use it wisely. Woohoo! Another improvement was the addition of another love interest. Now, it was clear from the beginning there would be more love interests added, but gosh, if you're not a fan of Theo, a second option would have been really nice from the get-go. I won't go too in-depth about love interest number 2 quite yet, but Zoo-wee mama, that guy sure is great. Woo! Whoops, sorry about that. That's what happens when I think about the best part of this game. Doi. Okay, what else is there? Pew Pew is more involved in the second love interest route and makes the conversations way more fun. Some of the art is pretty okay. The music is pleasant, it's nice. Oh, the theme song, while not as good as Mystic Messengers, is still a bit catchy. And, yeah. That's about it, really. Dislikes and nitpicks. Yeah, I know this section is technically the rest of the video, but I'll talk about any specific details I couldn't put anywhere else. Let's talk about the visuals, the art, if you will. As an artist myself, I just feel bad for the art team. I can't imagine how stressful it must be to create hundreds of CGs, so while the advertising likes to sell how many pictures you'll receive, don't count on how good it'll look. This is a quantity over quality type of experience. You'll quickly notice that a lot of the CGs have the love interest copy-pasted with slight adjustments. The rendering is not really present, especially in Theo's art for some reason. I get this slight uncanny valley feeling from the character art. There's just something off about them. I can't place it. It could be the coloring, the artificialness of them, but they're lacking a lot of life and expression. And no, I'm not saying it has to be an anime art style, but I can't deny that it's more difficult to capture exaggerated emotions in the semi-realistic art style the Ssum is going for. Also, the backgrounds, animals, and mob characters are so clearly real photographs with a bad filter slapped over them. When the love interest is placed in these realistic environments, it looks undeniably awful and awkward. I'm not sure how much time the art team had to work on these CGs, but looking at them, I can imagine they were in a rush. For comparison, look at the official promo art or special event art, and you can see there are some really good, talented artists involved. I would take this quality of art for less pictures, to be quite honest. By extension, this is one of the strong points of Otome games or visual novels as a whole. As the name implies, visual novels don't have much movement and can be rather static. Generally, the characters are looping through different sprites, which vary in their poses and expressions. But whenever a CG comes in, there's impact because you don't get those all the time. It's a special treat, and they are oftentimes rendered beautifully, like wallpaper-worthy illustrations. But the Ssum is so overwhelmed with low-quality pictures that I can't care about most of them. There's an occasional decent one that comes up, but it's not on par with most mainstream Otome or even Charitz's other games. Mystic Messenger didn't always have the greatest, prettiest, most consistent art either, but it's far more preferable to me than the Ssum's. Another thing I'm not fond of in this game is the lack of different endings. I know the story is technically ongoing, but we couldn't have encountered maybe one bad ending in the span of 100 to 200 days. Yeah, I know the experience is a pleasant scooter ride, but that doesn't mean you won't get in an accident on the way. Player choices actually do not matter or have any impact on the overall general story. No matter what you choose, whether you act cold to Theo or don't show any interest in him, you still get together as a couple on day 14. Only on occasion does the love interest call back to a choice you make, maybe like, oh yeah, you have a sweet tooth, right? But it doesn't have a major effect on anything. When a game has different endings, it's easier to convince players to replay the story and try other options. But this is a real-time story that takes place between 100 to 200 days, and I cannot see anyone replaying it when nothing is going to change the outcome. Even from a business perspective, the Ssum's approach falls flat because ideally a company would want players to come back repeatedly, as well as spend more money to get all the endings and see how all their choices change things. But no, the story is as linear as can be, like I'm talking a straight line. Boring. I'm not a fan of the lack of focus on the main mystery of the game. You know, the Forbidden Lab. Where are all the hints and foreshadowing? We only focus on it for like 4 in real life days between both routes. And it's not even the climax of either one. Oh, and this just leads to the most infuriating part. The way the MC and love interests put meeting each other offline on the back burner. What long-distance couple nonchalantly accepts being unable to meet? While the issue is brought up at some point in both routes, Pew Pew simply saying,
I'm sorry, you're not allowed
to share addresses and meet each other yet.
Is enough to end the discussion. Later, we'll get to a specific storyline in Theo's route that spotlights this topic more in depth. But, spoiler alert, nothing comes out of it, and the current story ends with the MC and both love interests not rushing to meet up in person. Add this one to the we'll get to it in the update pile. The last dislike I'll mention is more of a nitpick and doesn't impact the game at all. I just don't understand why the love interests have to change appearances. Honestly, their original designs look the best, especially in Theo's case. He gets worse and worse over time. I think what bothers me so much about this is the change in appearance is never acknowledged by the characters for some reason. At the very least, couldn't the MC say in passing, "Oh, I like your new hair color, babe." Just something to acknowledge the change happened. I initially believed that the change in appearance indicated the MC entered an alternate universe of some kind, but no. All the appearances are canon because sometimes the love interest sends an old selfie with their previous color schemes. It's a minor annoyance, so I'm moving on. Alrighty, with that, let's speedrun through my other nitpicks. Again, these are smaller complaints in the grand scheme of things. The rest of the gameplay outside of the chat has absolutely zero impact on the story and characters in the game. It's basically a time waster and a way to connect with other players if that's what you're looking for, but I dislike the disconnect between the main game and all these side activities. The English translation is very rough. You'll come across countless grammatical and spelling errors or nonsensical phrases in the characters' messages. While I do keep in mind that this game is from South Korea, I can't say I'm impressed by the quality of the translations, especially if people are paying an exorbitant amount of money to play it. I dislike this. Talking about every single planet. Okay, stay with me here. Planets! This is how the story of the Ssum is divided into arcs, and I mean arcs in a very loose way. There's hardly any linearity here. The 200 days with Theo are split up amongst 8 planets, so just a little under every month we switch to a new planet. With every planet, Theo's appearance changes, and supposedly, there is a different focus in the story. This logic applies to the other love interest as well. Even though the guy's appearances change, there is some loose form of continuity in the story. In future planets, sometimes the love interest will reference a plot point or character from a previous planet, but it's treated as a relatively minor, unimportant detail, so each planet's story is somewhat self-contained. My theory for my first video was that each planet was essentially an alternate universe where the MC meets different versions of Theo. His personality would be different and would change depending on choices or the weird color emotion orbs players collect, but no, that wasn't the case. Must have been too deep of a concept for a game like this. Well, I can't delay this part anymore. Time to explore all of the planets in Theo's route. Vanus. I don't know how to say this one. We start with Vanus, the first planet of the Ssum. This features a black-haired, purple-eyed Theo, and this is probably where 80% of players drop the game. It is subtitled, "Pleased to meet you, may I be your boyfriend?" So obviously this is a part of the game where we initially meet Theo and develop a relationship. Theo is staying at a hospital to heal an injury he sustained while at a film shoot. He's a novice film director, which we will hear about time and time again. He has this messenger app downloaded because he was hired by the mysterious developers, and we just so happened to come across this app and meet him. There's not really much discussion or concern about the weird situation. It's like, okay, guess we can be friends now, and any concern about the app is dropped until way later. During this time, we get to know Theo, and he's, a nice guy, really harmless, surprisingly super confident of himself and his looks. I honestly can only describe the plot of this planet as a slice of life to the nth degree, and honestly, sometimes it's really boring. The only thing I can really recall about the plot during this planet is that Theo picks up a new part-time job practically every day, and that's pretty much all we talk about. I mean, it's cute seeing him in a barista outfit at a cafe, or meeting a cute cat at his library job, but man, I couldn't tell you anything else about this time, which is fine, because this is a game that kind of replicates the ordinary day-to-day life of many people, in which a lot of days are not particularly memorable, but not unpleasant. Of course, notably, the confession happens and the relationship is established during this time. The surprising thing is that, despite the name of the game, Theo's route is not a slow burn romance at all. Rather, we get together within the first couple weeks. I put this at the end of my last video, but I have to emphasize it again. The Ssum's title refers to a Korean word that can be translated into the something between two people before they enter a relationship. You know, the crush phase of well they won't they, a very common trope of the friends to lovers slow burn genre. Fanfiction.net and AO3 readers will be very familiar with this concept. But this is something I do have an issue with. I really would have been interested in the romance taking just a bit longer to develop. Now, I'm not the biggest fan of a romance taking forever to kick off, like nearing the end of a story, but on the flip side, I also am not too big on getting into a relationship quickly. I think there's something fun and delightful about the crush phase in a relationship, where feelings are starting to emerge and there's this sort of tension between the couple. I certainly would have enjoyed seeing Theo be more reactive or appear embarrassed as he begins to piece together his feelings for us. Maybe we could have had the option to tease him about it and flirt with him, or we could seem unaware about it, or simply not be responsive to it. It would have been a fun part of the game, but instead, it was rather weird how it came about. The day before the confession, Theo acts distant and his behavior is weird, like he's feeling awkward, but there's no time for us to really absorb those weird feelings and awkwardness before he comes out and confesses to us. It's worth mentioning here too that I would have been interested in maybe having different checkpoints, so to speak, on getting into a relationship with Theo. Maybe there could be an opportunity early in the game to get together with him, or maybe that moment will come again later at a different point. I find it amusing that there are players who have literally ignored Theo or chose meaner responses only for him to still confess on day 14. I think this would have made the relationship icon on the profile page more meaningful and relevant, because we would have to choose appropriate responses in conversation in order to get with Theo. But our choices are actually pointless and don't have much impact anyway. Theo will still confess to us and we will still be forced into a relationship. Logistically though, I can understand that this would be a bit beyond the means of the writers, because they would have to adjust the script for those who aren't in a relationship yet, and the voice actor would have to redo lines. Still, it could have been an interesting feature. Regardless, I think I would have liked the crush phase of the relationship to last a little longer before we dived into a relationship where Theo is immediately calling us affectionate names and I love yous are already being exchanged. Besides the big confession though, I do have to mention there's an occasionally weird or interesting subplot, but it's nothing that actually has an impact. In fact, a lot of it is just dropped and never brought up again, or if it is, it's only a casual throwaway line in the future. A couple instances is one from when Theo is still in the hospital. In a few of his selfies he sends, there's a creepy figure in the background. I missed a lot of it until the subreddit or Theo himself pointed it out, and it's really super unsettling. So I was wondering if there was going to be this drama of a confrontation between that person and Theo, but yeah, it's just never brought up again once Theo is discharged from the hospital. That's weird. The second instance is when Theo responds to a super sus job ad and later in the day there's a stranger knocking on his door. It's this whole thing of, oh my god, Theo is getting kidnapped, and it seems to be some serious trouble for once. But no, Theo is on his phone afterward and tells us, don't worry,
자기야.
we worked it out and I'm free to go. And that's that. What? Did I miss something? And Theo doesn't seem too shaken by the experience either, because we are almost immediately thrown into the next planet. Speaking of which, Muri. Muri is the second planet of the Ssum. I argue that the second planet of the game is just as important as the first planet, because by this point, many players had dropped the game. Vanis could be considered underwhelming, and many players were left unimpressed. The leftover players were now looking forward to seeing one of the selling points of the Ssum. We were interested in these planets, and seeing these alternative versions of Theo. What could it all mean? How is it going to shake up the game? The curiosity resulted in some people to continue playing, despite their reservations of the first planet. It sure did for me. Plus, I promised all of you I'd make this video, so I didn't have much of a choice. So when Muri's time finally came around, with much anticipation and bated breath, the reception was even worse than Vanis.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Yuri is subtitled, "My boyfriend is a celebrity," with a description that says its shape resembles a complicated heart. The title is pretty descriptive. On this planet, Theo becomes a participant in a reality talent show called Muse of the Musical, or MOM for short. Okay. It's so out of nowhere because Theo has always emphasized his goal of being a film director. Yet, here we are, with Theo auditioning to be a celebrity who can sing, dance, and act. But that's not even what Theo wants to be. Wouldn't it make more sense that Theo got a job in the film production for this talent show? At least that aligns more with his dream job. But okay, sure, our boyfriend's a celebrity. At least he's gonna look hot and cool and oh god, what is that? I'm not sure what happened to the art quality, but Theo takes a nosedive from here on out. There were some decent CGs in Vanus, but starting in Muri, Theo always looks off in his character art. Specifically in Muri, I think his pale skin tone is working against him. In Vanus, his dark hair color helped provide contrast, but Muri's design has bright pink hair which blends into his skin, plus his eyebrows are a super light shade, so sometimes he straight up looks like he has none. And here comes the incoming jabs of Theo's ever-absent nose. Voldemort? Oh no, that's just Theo, ha ha ha. Come on, Jarretts, you make our guy an idol, but you do his look so dirty in this part. The story of this planet is basically Theo going through each phase of the competition and improving his performance skills. Not like we get to witness any of it. He makes friends along the way, like another competitor who goes by his character name Dracola, rivals in the form of Joseph, who steals Theo's phone one night and messages us, and mentors like a familiar face named Zen, a Mystic Messenger cameo. Who could see this coming? There's some competition shenanigans that occur, like a rivalry, jealousy, sabotage, and bonding, but nothing on par with the fun or ridiculousness of an actual reality show. Oh, and how could I forget? Harry Choi, Mr. Horsemask himself, is a judge for Mom. I suppose I should give an actual and proper introduction for Harry at this point. As I've mentioned, Harry is the second love interest, though at the time most players were going through this planet, we had no idea about it. Harry is an accomplished director and was a college classmate of Theo. Because of this and Harry's rather cold personality, Theo has an intense dislike of Harry, but also some begrudging respect. The most notable part about Harry is, of course, the horse mask he always wears, so no one knows what he actually looks like. Throughout Muri, Theo often complains about Harry and expresses his dislike of him. Harry likewise doesn't think highly of Theo and at one point in the competition gives him a very low score, though it's sort of his tsundere way of encouraging him, as we come to find out in his own route. Ultimately, it is Harry's fault that Theo gets eliminated from the competition later on. Now, out of the show, Theo cheers on his friends and steps out of the spotlight. If I have to give this planet anything, out of all the planets besides perhaps the last one, it has the most consistent plot throughout. It was cool to focus on one storyline for a while, but unfortunately we don't even get to see any part of the actual talent show. Instead, we get a recap by Theo on everything that happens. The weird play that he and Joseph and Dracola took part in, the shocking reveal of Harry giving a score of 0, so I must say I'm pretty disappointed about that. I also think the focus on Theo and Harry's rivalry was actually good. This is conflict. This creates drama. It's interesting. But yet again, there is not great execution. I was kind of expecting this bigger conflict to come around later in the story, like maybe Theo goes toe-to-toe with Harry in a film competition or something. But no, Harry only shows up again maybe once or twice in the remainder of the story, and thus the story of this rivalry remains open. Sad. Crowtune. The third planet, Crowtune, is subtitled Dreams, Ideals, and Reality, with a somewhat ominous description that says, "Love often crumbles at the face of reality." If you're curious, Theo's appearance is brown hair, gray eyes, and glasses. Ooh, I love a good megane. Meh. And gosh, this planet might be one of the most disappointing because of the possibilities. Are you seeing a pattern here? Let's start with the lesser disappointing of the two. Theo visits his mom for a day. Theo had previously described his interactions with his mother in his childhood and how she is toward Theo's dad, so by this point we had a good sense of her personality. She's pretty dry and blunt and encourages him to be independent. Oftentimes I think she's a bit neglectful though, but sadly, for the limited amount of time she is in the game, she didn't even get to interact with the MC. It was a missed opportunity to not have her maybe snoop through her son's phone and lead to her messaging with the MC, at least for one chat. I would have really liked to have directly interacted with Theo's mom, but that opportunity has come and gone. On to the next issue, which is arguably more egregiously handled. The next plotline is where I really lose it, because it feels like the climax of the biggest mystery of the Ssum, and they blew it. Theo decides he is going to see the developers and confront them on issues, like how the MC and Theo still haven't been able to exchange much personal information because the app blocks it. Theo investigates and eventually winds up at the developer's office, which has been abandoned and is in disarray, like the developers were in a rush to leave. He finds a USB that contains details from the developers meeting, which shows development notes and the relocation of the company, but not much in the way of clues on where they went or what the mysterious app is. And it's been like over 100 days since that happened, and I'm not any closer to knowing the answers. Yup, it's dropped for later, beyond the 200 days. If you were hoping to get some answers on the mysterious Forbidden Lab and the app and what Pew Pew is, you're not gonna find out yet. The characters don't really seem to care, so why should I? Hope future players enjoy finding out the answers after 300 days of story, or just about a year's worth. Golly. Good luck guys, you're gonna need it. And that's basically all the interesting stuff from this planet. Onward! Tolup. The next planet is Tolup, subtitled A Time of the Two of Us. Okay guys, I honestly don't remember what happened on this planet. Shame on me for not writing this part of the script during that time. It really came and went. By this point, we entered day 90. The fatigue really hit me at this point. I was bored of the Ssum and bored of Theo. Whenever I checked the time in my day-to-day life and realized it was time to go back to the app to talk to Theo, I would lose all motivation, but begrudgingly open the app. Between you and me, I was keeping up with the Ssum for the purpose of this update video more than my personal enjoyment. Otherwise, I probably would have dropped the game at this point. You can look at my Milky Way calendar and tell how unmotivated I was to keep up with the chats by now. But there is one thing I can comment on, like what the f was going on with Theo's stickers on this planet? It's definitely low effort, but it makes me laugh for how bad it looks. But yeah, nothing happened on this planet. Cloudy. Following up the Forgettable Planets lineup, we have Cloudy, or his galaxy. After my disaster with Tolup, the game was pretty dead to me by this point. I knew it was going to be the same old with Theo. We'd get slice of life stories, small cute romantic moments, and a touch of dramatic moments. I understood how this game flowed by this point, but then, on the horizon, something unexpected happened. A hero we needed and deserved emerged in the form of Harry. Wait. I'm getting ahead of myself. Horseman gets the section dedicated only to him. We're still talking about Theo's route here. I'm sorry, Carrot Man. Cloudy actually had a couple things going for it, but in typical Ssum fashion, the execution is not good. In a better game, these storylines could be made even more dramatic or interesting. Namely, I'm talking about how Theo's dad makes his first appearance, but it's not even treated as important as I thought it'd be. For context, Theo's dad has been absent for quite a while, even before the MC met Theo 100-something days ago. In the first planet, Theo discusses how important his dad is to him, and you get a real sense of their relationship. His dad is apparently a relatively famous film director who inspired Theo to follow his footsteps. Theo respects his dad and is rather sensitive to any comments made toward him. There's a surprising amount of buildup for Theo's dad, so I was expecting his first appearance in the story to be this grand, momentous occasion. It wasn't that. It was a rather standard slice of life story. Who would have thought? Theo's dad appears out of nowhere, takes his son to an amusement park, and suddenly disappears again. Yay! I love half-assed payoff. I know I've been keeping this entire section of the video rather simplistic, but I have to say it now. There is a terrible writing issue that pervades Theo's route, which became super apparent after the father-son reunion on this planet. I won't go into it right now, but in the section after this one, I will be going in on how dirty Theo was done, because this is pissing me off. Bernie. Another planet that drags. I was ever so slightly excited to see a blue-haired Theo, but that did not pan out well. The subtitle goes, "Privileged to like something." Just briefly, we return to Theo's original dream. If you forgot, which I don't blame you for since it's not a major focus, Theo is an aspiring film director. And for once in the whole game, he is finally doing something related to film. He interviews a few people, does a little bit of filming, and then, I don't know. I don't actually know what ends up happening. If any of you guys did make it this far in the game, can you remind me? Because I think this storyline gets dropped and I don't remember anything coming out of it. You know, for someone who is aspiring to be a director, I don't see Theo doing many film-related things. He seems to be a movie buff, and there was this one subplot where he was coming up with a story idea and working with his professors or editors or something, but there's no payoff or conclusion to this. I thought the film thing would be a bigger deal in Theo's route, and the story would follow him in his career working on a movie or a project, but it's always placed in the background, so it doesn't feel important to the narrative so much as it's just something for Theo to talk to us about. Like, oh no, I'm having writer's block. I don't think I'm passionate about movies anymore. I can't do anything. The following day, I think my story is finally going somewhere. I'm going to be a film director someday. I love you, honey. The end. Like, what movie did he end up making? It's not that big of a deal, I guess, but it's not like it's brought up at all later. Can we have some emotional catharsis or something? Some character growth? I don't know. Maybe something like Theo was a complete amateur at the beginning of the story, but then he continuously works on film projects and eventually makes his own movie and gets recognized for it. Wouldn't that be more interesting? But here we are, planet number 6, Bernie. And Theo is in the same place he was on planet number 1 over 125 days ago. Isn't that something? Pi. The one who has set his heart on fire. Oh my, this sounds like a planet full of passion. You know, for having a storyline that features many incidents involving fire and smoke inhalation, I'm surprised this planet was not called Bernie instead. In this story, an arsonist is going around causing fires in various places, including Theo's apartment. Oh no! This leads to Theo bumming around outside of his apartment for a couple days and meeting other random, interesting background characters you will never see again. And, yeah, I don't care to spend more time on this part. Next! Moment. Finally, a planet I can talk about more, and it's the final planet! From the moment the Ssum was released, there were several players who time traveled throughout the game to find interesting developments. One of the most notable early spoilers has to do with Moment, which, by its name and the planet's appearance, instantly alerted players of Mystic Messenger. To the uninitiated, keeping it simple, in Mystic Messenger, there is a cult called Mint Eye, who are the true antagonists of the story. It involves brainwashing, kidnapping, manipulation, peer pressure and shaming, worship. You know, typical cult things. When I first heard about Moment, I immediately rolled my eyes. I talked about this in my last video, but I don't want Mystic Messenger to be used to lift up the Ssum. I don't mind cameos of the Mystic Messenger cast or other little Easter eggs for players, but I do have a problem when the story, feeling like it can't stand on its own merits, has to rely on the famous and frankly better predecessor. Well, let's give it a fair chance. Theo is back with the black hair, which honestly made me ever so slightly happy because I always thought he looked best with this color. Only difference is that his eyes are minty blue. I remember this version of Theo used to be shown in the App Store where he shows up looking a little deranged, not gonna lie. So people were super speculating that Theo goes off on the dark end and joins the Mint Eye cult. Well, they're half right. Sorta. Let me explain. Theo meets up with his cousin Noah, who he hasn't seen in a while. His cousin is odd and aloof and really obsessed with astronomy and acquiring this special meteorite. As a quick aside, it's funny because this guy shows up in Harry's route at some point and he comes across as this weird hippie vagabond that loves nature, so I really didn't expect his role in Theo's route. One thing leads to another and Noah guides Theo into the Mint Eye cult. Seems like the meteorite is important for the cult for some unspecified reason. Theo becomes suspicious of the place because everyone is acting like they're, brainwashed, and he gets creeped out.
Shut it!
And along the way, of course, other Mystic Messenger characters make cameos in this planet, including V, Unknown, and the one who must not be named. V has a bit more involvement in the plot than the other two, but only to the extent of warning Theo he needs to get out of here. So Theo grabs his cousin Noah, convinces him to leave, and they both escape the cult. It sounds like it should have been a more exciting escapade. I mean, that was literally what we did in one of the routes in Mystic Messenger, but beyond the player being concerned about Theo's well-being and I sure hope he doesn't drink that brainwashing elixir, I didn't feel any sense of immediate danger. Having the whole storyline conveyed through Theo's text messages just doesn't do it for me. I'm realizing how much I miss those story segments from Mystic Messenger when we break away from the chat room and see the character sprites in their environments. It's almost like this game is missing the key components of a visual novel. But for the moment, this is where Theo's story comes to an end. And I must say, what the f was the storyline? For what reason did the Mint Eye get involved? What does the Mint Eye, or Mystic Messenger by extension, have anything to do with the Ssum, the Forbidden Lab, Pew Pew, and anything else in this story? Actually, what the hell was the Ssum anyway? 200 days for what? We didn't get to meet Theo in person. It's not even up for discussion at this point anymore. We are no closer to knowing what the Forbidden Lab is now than the beginning of the story, and don't you say, well, we did have that one plot where we went to look for the developers and they were gone. Sure, that was over 100 days ago and hasn't been brought into relevancy since. If you're gonna have a layer of intrigue in your game, maybe deepen the mystery throughout. It doesn't have to be all the time, but maybe the characters discover something new about the developers, the doctor, the lab, and ask more questions about it. I pray that this Mint Eye Mystic Messenger plot was just a big cameo and has nothing to do with the answers to the mysteries and conclusion of the Ssum. It comes across as lazy and cash grabbing because it tells me that the writers of the Ssum and Chariots did not ever believe the Ssum could stand on its own, so they felt they had to milk the legacy of Mystic Messenger even longer. I have to say it straight up, but this game is garbage. Theo was done dirty. In my first video, I described Theo as a generic nice guy. I didn't think it was much of a problem back then. He's simple, sure, maybe boring, but I couldn't really find much to criticize about him at the time. If you want to appeal to all players, then a friendly love interest is probably the best way to go. Not everyone likes the jerk types, the kohai types, the pretty boy types. Not everyone loves the boy next door type, but everyone might at least like him just fine. But gradually, Theo begins to unravel himself a bit more. After months of talking to him, it really began to dawn on me. Theo is selfish and immature. Yes, he is kind and frequently comes across as a cute, adoring boyfriend, like, "Aw, he's such a golden retriever." But whenever moments became serious or tense with the MC, Theo's choice of action is to always run away. He doesn't want to talk about the issue. He would rather avoid it. He'll pretend he's fine, even though it's very obvious he is feeling agitated from the way he writes in conversation. Even if the MC points it out to him, Theo will ignore that comment and keep talking on before abruptly leaving the chat room. It isn't until a nighttime chat and call where there is resolution and Theo admits his true feelings. If you know, you know. That was probably the worst day in all of Theo's route. What a waste of time. A character should not be perfect and without flaw. I think having Theo act this way at the start of the game is perfectly fine, so long as it's acknowledged as a fault and Theo works on it and shows that he's getting better about it. But no, this scenario pops up more than I care for. It's never treated as an issue he needs to address and fix. We kiss and make up, and it's never brought up until the next time. This is probably the most problematic aspect about Theo for me personally. I won't say it completely ruins his appeal, but it does bring him down a notch. Perhaps what really hurts Theo is that he can't shine as much as I think he could. Harry's route actively includes Pew Pew, the AI mascot bird of the Messenger app. Pew Pew is almost always engaged in conversation, acting as a third party to bounce off of between the love interest and the MC, and has useful functions like sending pictures without permission and allowing the MC to eavesdrop on conversations. I'll talk more about how this benefits Harry specifically in his respective section, but I think Pew Pew would have helped Theo just as much as it did Harry. I mean, imagine how much more fun Planet Muri and its Muse of the Musical storyline would have been if we could utilize Pew Pew's features. All the conversations, interactions, and relationships between the different cast members, like Joseph and Dracola Dude, as well as the judges Zen and Harry, would have been shown to players rather than told as a first-hand account by Theo. Pew Pew is relegated to a background role as a fittingly robotic and lifeless narrator that pops up on occasion in Theo's route. Because we don't have a third party in conversation to spice up the interactions, it comes across as Theo always talking about himself. It makes him out to be quite selfish and hogging the conversation. Certainly, from a writing and technical standpoint, it would be impractical and inefficient to have the love interest stop to let the MC speak every turn, though having Pew Pew involved would make it feel like there's more of a back and forth conversation going on, and it becomes less about Theo, Theo, Theo. It is kind of weird because in the last half of the game, every blue moon, Pew Pew appears in conversation, yet it's never addressed. Despite being a major plot point in the Crotoon planet, I know the idea is that there are different versions of Pew Pew depending on which love interest route you take, but come on, having Pew Pew around could have certainly shaken things up more. Another issue with Theo is I find him to be too childish sometimes. This guy really loves role-playing and talking about fairies. I can't take him seriously as a 27-year-old partner because everything that comes out of his mouth is so f***ing cringe. I'm charmed by golden retriever type characters, but this is too much of a puppy dog character. Emphasis on the puppy. Finally, the biggest issue with Theo is his story. The Ssum is ultimately a slice-of-life story. There's no getting around it. It's not trying to be Mystic Messenger, despite its desire to shove in the antagonist organization from that game in the climax of this story. It figures that maybe these simple conversations are what a slice of life is. It's everyday life. It can be boring or more interesting some days, but even so, in people's lives, there are challenges and obstacles. There is resolution. It could be good, it could be bad, but regardless, people experience things and they grow from them. Everyone goes through arcs. You can't tell me that slice of life stories can't even have just one plot line from beginning to end. Having an end goal. What does the character ultimately want? How is the character different in the end compared to the beginning? Theo does not go through that. He is the same character at the beginning of the game as he is at the end. The difference? You're dating. That's it. He does not go from aspiring film director to film director. He is still aspiring. His rivalry with Harry and feeling of inadequacy in filmmaking? Still present and not fully addressed. This is why I think the core issue with Theo is not entirely his personality or appearance, but his character arc. I still believe there was potential with Theo, but the writers at Chariots failed to create a compelling story for him. So I'm going to give it a try. But to do that, I'm going to first look at a character in the Ssum that Chariots mostly succeeded in writing a great character arc. Harry Choi. Yes, it's time for real. Harry Choi! So Harry Choi is finally added to the Ssum. Chariots had long teased that additional love interests would be added to the game. It only took 100 days from launch, but we finally had choices! I recalled my feeling of disappointment with Theo's route by Muri, the second planet, many months ago. So what if there's a second love interest? Chariots and the Ssum fooled me once before. I will not be fooled again. But my friends, I was wrong. Harry Choi is undoubtedly, hands down, the best part of the Ssum. Okay, the bar was already set low, so honestly it didn't take much to surpass Theo, but honest to God, Harry was the breath of fresh air this game desperately needed, and convinced me to stay on board for the rest of Theo's route. I did it for you. Harry is radically different from Theo. In Theo's route, Harry comes across as abrasive, a little arrogant, and actually a weirdo. Well, in Harry's route, Harry comes across as abrasive, a little arrogant, and actually a weirdo. Ew. So yeah, if you've played enough of Theo's route and met Harry, you already have a really good sense of his basic character trope. A true kudere, which means a character who is rather stoic and calm-minded, but warms up over time. That is to say, Harry's route is a slow burn. Unlike Theo, who you get together with before the first month even ends, you don't get with Harry Choi till the very, very end. So much at the end, you actually don't get much of an opportunity to see your MC and him act as a couple within the first 100 days of his route. Now, while I did say that I disliked how quickly you get together with Theo, and I'm not a fan of it also taking way too long, I do have to admit, the relationship between the MC and Harry encapsulates the meaning of the game's title. Remember, the Ssum is essentially translated as more than friends, less than lovers. This becomes more apparent over time, but you have to have a lot of patience with Harry's story. The relationship is rocky and standoffish to begin with, because Harry just can't read the room and doesn't want anything to do with the MC. But in due time, Harry eventually lets down his guard, and he accepts the MC as a part of his daily life. So much so, we no longer need Pew Pew to force him to talk to the MC. At some point, Harry seeks out the MC of his own accord. He got me so wrapped around his finger, him finally saying goodnight to me rocked my world. Harry's character might not be for everyone. He fits the bill of a rich boy who is unaware of social cues or being nice to people, so he can be rude and tactless to others, even if he means well. You know, that roundabout, contradictory way of showing kindness by being mean. He's selfish in that he is lazy about doing things he doesn't want to, like his job, but becomes completely enthralled whenever something does catch his interest. He also doesn't know how to take care of himself, so he relies on a personal assistant and a bodyguard who is called the Big Guy to help him out. Unsurprisingly, he has the trademark sad rich boy backstory, like his parents were neglectful but also super controlling of his life, so he tries to block out his emotions and seems detached to everything. But it all actually pays off because Harry undergoes a character arc over the span of his route. It's actually incredible how much Harry changes in 100 days, especially when compared to Theo's static character in 200 days. Oh, no, I'm not saying that Harry's transformation is so extraordinary and unexpected. It happens exactly as you would think, but I think this is where the real-time gameplay shines, because Harry's progression feels natural and not shoved in our faces. You'll notice over time the very subtle changes in Harry's character, and that makes it feel like everything is worthwhile, and that this game is not pointlessly meandering for months. What makes Harry's character shine so much goes beyond his interactions with the MC. There are actually side characters who make his route feel more full and exciting. Pew Pew is a very notable one. It likes to hop into conversation all the time and has this cute relationship with Harry, who teases or bullies it all the time. In Theo's route, I can hardly remember what Pew Pew was like. It was just there sometimes, but in Harry's route, Pew Pew is a constant and an upbeat character who I looked forward to interacting with. Pew Pew also went through some story arcs, which was surprising, but it really helped give more insight into the mystery of the game and hinted at what the Forbidden Lab is and who is the one behind it. You also have Harry's sister, Rachel Choi, a rich, pretty girl who has a similar sense of superiority, but with more bite and a sassy attitude. Tagging along are Harry's friends Malong Jo, a socialite, and Tane Park, who owns a bar that Harry frequents and has a crush on Rachel. Both of his friends are great foils to Harry as they drag him along into their shenanigans. They definitely fill the role of comedic relief, but they're a great contrast to Harry's stoicism and stir up the melodrama for storylines. Another fantastic side character is the aforementioned big guy, who is Harry's doting bodyguard. This guy just can't leave Harry alone and always spoils him by cooking and cleaning and doing his bidding. I love this character. He's probably my favorite right after Harry himself. I imagine he has like this huge stature, but is just a big fluffy teddy bear. He's surprisingly an important element in Harry's character development. At some point, Harry wants to be more independent in his life and do things on his own, like chores and driving around, so he lets the big guy go, much to my great sadness, but a great turning point for the character. Compare the sidecast of Harry's route to Theo's, and for me, it's no competition. Harry's route has a more fun, fleshed out cast. I hardly recall any of Theo's friends, much less their names and personalities. What really puts Harry's story and characters on a pedestal is what I consider to be the most significant element that was woefully left out in Theo's route. Having a feature that lets the MC listen in on conversations occurring outside the phone. You're not being told what is happening, rather you are listening in on the interactions and conversations between Harry and other characters. So much more life and energy is able to come through with this feature, rather than having events recounted to you through your love interest words. And sorry, Theo is just not an interesting narrator, and I don't think Harry would be either, to be quite honest. Without this feature, I am certain that Harry's route would not nearly be as enjoyable as it is now. I like Harry's character enough, but that's only during one-on-one conversations between him and the MC. It would have been a total drag to have Harry describe what weird stuff happened and how he feels about it. Show, don't tell. Also, some smaller notable things I like in Harry's route. Harry's art is weirdly better than Theo's. Maybe it's because the art team had more time before his story was released, but man, it was less unsettling than Theo's CGs. Of course, a lot of the art is copy-pasted, but at least it had a more consistent quality, and he had a nose. Harry is shirtless a lot. I wasn't expecting it because Theo's route is too squeaky clean, unfortunately. But some of these CGs are like, whoo, yes, finally some delicious food. This is undoubtedly a fat W in my book. There was a segment toward the end of the story where this mysterious hacker enemy, their intentions are still unclear right now, but an individual named Angel hacks into your chat from time to time and stirs some shit. This is yet again a mystery to solve in a later update, but I did enjoy the angst this character added to the story and how it develops the MC's relationship with Harry. There's this part where the MC can choose to see a good future or a bad future with Harry. I didn't choose the bad future because I like the good shit. I must say, this CG you get out of it is actually my favorite, and the conversations were really touching. I don't know what implications this has, if at all, but it was a memorable part of the story.
Okay guys, so sorry for the sudden audio change, but I must say I just realized that this Mint Eye poster for Mystic Messenger, it says accept the angel's invitation, and I'm like, wait a second, Harry's route has that hacker dude who's named Angel, so like I guess Harry's route does have a Mystic Messenger reference in it, and it might be tied to Mint Eye. Awesome, I love Mystic Messenger being in the Ssum. I'm so happy, woohoo!
Of course, this is the Ssum, so Harry's route isn't all perfect and has some shortcomings. If you're not a fan of slice of life, which is basically what Theo's route is, Harry is not much different and isn't likely to change your mind. In comparison to Theo, I do think the presentation is more enjoyable through Harry's personality, Pew Pew, and the eavesdropping feature. Still, there are many loose plot threads, sometimes interconnected, but don't expect a grand story. Yet again, we get hints about the Forbidden Lab and the mysterious app, but we are still mostly kept in the dark. But if that didn't bother you in Theo's route, then you'll be fine with Harry. My biggest gripe with Harry's route is, unfortunately, a very important part of any romance. A confession is the dramatic peak of a romance, the part everyone is waiting for. You have to deliver on this successfully, or else it could risk disappointing people. And much to my great sadness, the confession on the very last day is terribly underwhelming. For being a slow burn, I was waiting for months with much anticipation for the culmination of our relationship. So to get to the end only to receive such a subpar confession is not very emotionally fulfilling. Even Theo, as disappointed as I am with his story, had a rather sweet confession scene, and it was pleasant to see him ramble about every single thing he liked about the MC. I get that Harry is emotionally underdeveloped, but look at any examples across media, and you can easily find characters similar to him that have satisfying and happy confessions. This is also not really helped by the fact that his route literally ends after the confession, so we didn't have the time to enjoy the start of a romantic relationship and see how Harry is as a boyfriend. But, you know, as I've been saying, that's probably what the update is for. And hey, for the Ssum, Harry's route is the greatest thing that could have happened to it. Okay, so I know I said I was only focusing on the first 100 days of Harry's route, but after discovering what occurs in the latest update up to 200 days, I feel obligated to include my disappointment in this video. All that I will say on it is breakup storylines, ex-fiancé and needless drama, continuous unfulfilling pining for Harry. Ugh. I'm honestly at a point with the Ssum now where I can't find much of anything to like about this game. It continuously manages to find new ways to piss me off. Yeah, Harry is not like the best route in all of Otome or anything, but for the Ssum, he was a lifeline for me, and I know for many others. I'm not sure what the point of the Ssum really is anymore, but it's convinced me more and more over time that it's not worth sparing any thought to, especially not another $2. It's not a good product at the end of the day, and a company that should have had another hit on their hands completely fumbled the ball. You literally had Harry Choi and me in the palm of your hands, yet you dropped it completely. Great fucking job. Fixing Theo's route. Now that I've dived into what made Harry's route enjoyable, I'm going to apply its best qualities in a rewrite of Theo's route. I'm not going to pretend I'm a professional game writer by any means, but I am going to try and fix Theo's route based on ideas I believe could have their potential fully realized. There were actually interesting concepts the Ssum could utilize, but unfortunately were not executed as well and as thoroughly I would have liked. My biggest gripe with Theo's route is a lack of direction, and I mean this in both a narrative and character-driven sense. Take Harry's route, which has an incredibly clear goal by the end of the story. Harry will learn to open up about his emotions and eventually come to love the MC. There, it's simple, but it provides an expectation of where the story will go. Yes, Harry's route would still fall under the slice of life umbrella with plenty of fluff to fill in the gaps, but no matter what the weird plot of the day was, it always has to do with Harry confronting a situation that makes him reassess his emotions and relationships with others. Considering that, my ideal version of Theo's story would have a larger, more dramatic focus on some key ideas, namely Theo's film career, Theo's relationship with his father, and the so-called Forbidden Lab. From the beginning, it's made clear that Theo is an aspiring director who has yet to make a mark with a movie of his own. The actual story of the Ssum treats this more as a footnote than a deep storyline. There are some moments where Theo does film work, but it's always treated like it's one of his countless side jobs he does. So in this version of the story, we are going to focus way more on this. A change I would make for this narrative I'm crafting is to age down Theo and make him a college student. Gasp, you might interject, but tator-chan, I like grown men. Why oh why must Theo be aged down? It's simple, really. As I mentioned earlier, Theo does not act like a 27-year-old. With Harry, I can buy that he is 28 because of his logical responses to situations and his cool-headedness. Besides being babysat by employees, Harry comes across as a relatively independent and capable adult. Theo, on the other hand, does not have the personality of an almost 30-year-old. I'm sorry. He'd fit much better in the role of the wide-eyed college student who's just starting to get his feet wet with film production production. This also ties in well with the theme that Theo's story would capture, which is discovering your dream and not being afraid to pursue it. In this story, Theo, who is in college, is figuring out what he wants to do with his life. This explains why he is constantly revolving through different part-time jobs. It is a little later when we learn that Theo actually had a dream when he was younger, to be a film director, just like his dad. However, let's say there might have been a conflict between him and his dad, who disapproved of the films Theo made and said they weren't good enough. This constant criticism from his father made Theo believe he would never be able to impress his dad, and he decides to abandon his dream. But now, in the present day, as the MC gets to know Theo, they point out how much Theo loves film and gets really passionate about filmmaking. Out of everything in his ordinary life, the one thing that Theo gets excited for is film. And from this, the MC encourages Theo to pursue filmmaking. Initially, there are bumps in the road as Theo decides to make a short film. Maybe there will be a film festival at his university or something. Theo struggles with his confidence in filmmaking, but with the MC's support, he is able to overcome his fears and submit a film at the festival. Not sure if he wins or not in this narrative, but despite that, Theo is touched by how many people like his movie. This motivates him to pursue filmmaking for real now. The rest of the route story would be about him involved in film production with the projects getting bigger and bigger. Hey, we can even say he joins the Muse of the Musical production crew, if we want to keep some original content in here. At the midpoint of the story, when Theo is neck deep into the production of his movie, his dad pops back into his life, causing Theo to panic and throwing production into disarray. Surprisingly, the MC learns that his dad is not a scary, mean guy. In fact, he's super loving of his son, but has high standards when it comes to filmmaking. He's just very passionate about his craft and knows Theo has so much potential, so he always pushes him to be better. I imagine this whole conversation happens directly between the MC and Theo's dad. This allows the players to really get to know his dad on a personal level and develop this small friendship with him. Before Theo's dad pieces out, he asks the MC to stick by Theo's side and support him so he makes an incredible movie. Maybe the final story arc involves Harry Choi, who is also making a movie, so here's the rivalry between them being put into focus. It becomes this competition of who will create the most successful movie between them. At the end, Theo makes an independent movie that is a modest success. Unsurprisingly, not to the level of the popular Harry's film, but Theo's dad finally gives his approval. You can break up the story however you'd like over the 200 days and the extra content, but this is how the general overall story and direction of Theo's route goes. Definitely could be improved, and I'm not saying that this is the best idea for the story, but it's an example of why I think giving Theo's character a direction would have improved my enjoyment so much. Gosh, reading this really makes me so upset about what actually happens in the story, or rather, what doesn't happen in the story. Oh yeah, the Forbidden Lab. I'm gonna leave this one open, just because I'm sure Chariots will eventually get around to showing the answers in the near future. But I would just say that including more hints and secrets of the Forbidden Lab would feed into people's curiosity. It would certainly make me feel like they didn't completely sweep the issue under the rug and waste my time. But who knows, maybe Theo's route becomes super interesting beyond the initial 200 days. I can never dismiss the possibility, but so far, I don't really have any expectations. Good luck to you, Chariots, and all you players. It should have been better. I am constantly asking myself, where did the Ssum go wrong? I don't know how Chariots lost its way. A few years ago, it felt like Chariots was on top of the world and gained so much respect and admiration from the community. It felt like the company and its employees were driven to do good for the world. Their charity work and mental health awareness initiatives come to mind, and Mystic Messenger itself discusses various aspects of mental health. Even if it's not a perfect depiction, there's good intention behind it. But I could feel the passion, the effort Chariots put into their work. Even besides Mystic Messenger, see Dandelion or Nameless. These are all great works and have a sense of depth and sincerity. However, the company is currently in an interesting situation, perhaps one that is of concern. We're at a point now where Mystic Messenger, while it remains a popular staple in Chariots' lineup, is probably finished for good. Personally, I don't have any need for more stories or additional routes. I feel like the game has accomplished what it set out to do, and it did a marvelous job at it. Now, Chariots should be focusing on newer titles, such as the Ssum. And, well, see what I had to say this entire video. In my view, the Ssum is a spectacular failure and disappointing in most every regard. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Conceptually, this is an interesting game. It would be pleasant to casually check into an app daily and have this virtual fictional boyfriend to catch up with and develop a deeper relationship with. But if you are going to have a game that lasts a long time in real life, you better make damn sure the writing and characters are fantastic. It became a slog to play this game because, honestly, I mostly felt bored with it. Throughout this review, I identified and broke down the various reasons this was the case. There were moments that were enjoyable and fun. The voice acting was truly great, and the voice actors brought so much life to their characters. Even if I'm not a fan of Theo, I can't deny that his actor is infectiously cheery and adorable. So props to him for being the main reason I couldn't find it in me to entirely dislike Theo. It's just a shame that he couldn't shine more in a better game. And just maybe, this game might not be for me. Perhaps I had entirely wrong expectations coming into the game, so it failed to impress me. There's still a community of fans out there who thoroughly enjoy this game and will continue to play it in the probable years to come. I had a few comments in my last video that showcases that. For that, I genuinely think that's great, and I'm very happy for the fans, and hope that Chariots continues to deliver for you. So is this the worst Otome out there? I don't think so. I know I ripped into the Ssum the whole video, but again, that came from a place of disappointment and the belief that it could have been more than it is now. I don't think I will ever return to the Ssum in the future. I'm closing the book on this year-long journey I undertook. Instead, I look forward to what Chariots has to offer in the future. After all, it made an Otome that I hold dear and near to my heart. Surely, they will have it in them to do that again someday. Thank you all for tuning in.